So I guess I caved in and decided to make the review. You're welcome, I guess? This review style is something I've been mulling over for a while, and I think I've finally finalized it. Welcome to Playin' Way. What'll happen is I'll grade these features: plot, presentation, music, and gameplay. They'll be graded individually on a scale from 1 to 7, and then I'll average up all the scores, and that will be my final grade. Anyways, let's get to what you came here for. A review of Kirby Star Allies. So let's get to what will surely be the shortest portion, the plot. Even if you haven't played a Kirby game before, you probably know that they don't go super in depth. Recent games have had more engaging plot lines, but this one goes back to a simple formula. An unknown evil has broken the seal on a dark being, and in the process it has showered the universe in its evil heart magic. Just roll with it. It begins to infect many of the inhabitants of Popstar, causing them to rampage. Kirby, being woken up by all the ruckus, goes on an adventure to set things right. And that's really it. I'd like to go into character backstory, but the mage trio are not very developed, and even the main antagonist is not that interesting, to be brutally honest. There are instances that expand on the Kirby lore, but only a fan of Kirby would really understand these connections. So yeah, not much to evaluate. That being said, I don't think simple stories hinder a game experience if done correctly, and sometimes I appreciate stories I don't have to get invested in. With that in mind, I will give the plot a middle-of-the-road score with a 4. Presentation is next, and boy does this game not disappoint. I'm gonna just get it out of the way and say the gameplay does run at 30 FPS, and it is strange that the menus run at 60 FPS, but I don't think the frame rate matters too much for a simple platformer such as Kirby. If it was a fighting game or a bullet hell, I'd probably raise an eyebrow, but back to the main game. The graphics in this game are so delightful. The colorization themes the game offers is impressive in particular, as you find bright poppy colors in green gardens and drastic dark and saturated colors in enemy territories. I feel like when going through ability menus it's very manageable because the information is condensed, and when you flip through the pages they are instant. The main menu is also easy to navigate even when it gets filled up with the extra modes. Quick edit, because I don't know where to put this, I'm just gonna plop it here. Nintendo has been adding new Dream Friends, with the first 3 being Rick, Kine, and Koo, Marks, and Gooey. We don't know when the next wave is coming, but the extra content is a nice addition, especially because it's free. So yeah, thanks Nintendo. Because of the game's excellent look and simple but functional UI, the presentation earns a well-deserved 7. Music has always been a joy to listen throughout all the Kirby games, but does Star Allies follow through with this? I'd say yes. Per usual, a lot of the past games' music has been taken and remixed in new and interesting ways. Some of the music is just straight up ripped from the old games, which is a neat nostalgia trip for longtime fans such as myself. Kirby has always been known to experiment with different instruments for its music, and Star Allies is no different. The tracks can feature electric guitars, trumpets, flutes, and even a purposeful off-key violin. And I'll have to give the new music tracks equal credit, as some of them stand out, and in the process get stuck in your head. Sacred Square is one in particular I've hummed to myself even while playing a completely different game. As a matter of fact, it's the song you're listening to right now. While many of the new stage themes are a great listen, I think I enjoyed the new boss themes the most. I won't reference the bosses or even play the music for the sake of keeping things spoiler free, but just trust me when I say these themes are some of the best in the series. For this and all the aforementioned reasons, the music in Kirby Star Allies gets a 7. Now for what most of you are waiting for, the gameplay. And this one's going to be a bit of a hot topic because of the 2 ways you can play Star Allies, single player and multiplayer. But let's get some of the more basic stuff out of the way. As for controls, Kirby is pretty easy to control. You can run, jump, and float your way through several unique stages, some of which you have to unlock by finding hidden switches. Abilities are also easy to use, with not many of them requiring complex or fast inputs. Speaking of abilities, I'd like to go over the new additions for Star Allies. Staff is easily my favorite, as it has some unique movement options and has some great reach. Yeah, I know the original inspiration is Journey to the West, but I'm sure 90% of the people would first equate it to Goku's Power Pole. Spider would be my next favorite, as it's just fun to watch captured enemies bounce around after you kick them. Though there's something disturbing about completely entrapping enemies and watching them struggle for dear life. Its friend ability also gives you and your pals a bouncing platform, which can be helpful in some situations. The paint ability, as interesting as it sounds, is honestly the weakest of these 3. Its moveset feels somewhat lacking with only 6 moves, Its biggest perks are interactable canvases that can yield items or collectibles, and the friend ability gives you health items. It also holds many references to past games, so I appreciate it for that as well. The last ability I feel that's worth mentioning, though it's not new, is cleaning. It received a huge facelift from its Dreamland 3 iteration. The main gimmick is that it includes all of the friends that were introduced in Dreamland 3 in its moveset, which I think is an excellent touch. So let's go over the modes in this game. Story mode will see you going on an adventure to save the universe, pretty typical Kirby affair. The mode is pretty easy, with it taking me about 5 to 6 hours to beat, and this includes collecting all of the rare puzzle pieces. These puzzle pieces will reveal nice portraits the more you collect, but only the rare puzzle pieces count towards the 100%, so don't stress about finishing them all. My biggest gripe is that the game just gives you the answers to puzzle rooms. I feel like the puzzle would be more engaging if they gave you a couple abilities and it's up to you to find the correct combination. Other than platforming stages, the main adventure features boss fights, and have mixed feelings on them. So the boss fights themselves are good. They have cool arenas to battle in, the moveset of each boss is unique, and they can actually pose a threat if you go in guns blazing. However, the devs seem to have forgotten to scale the health bars according to how many teammates you have. I'm sure without the partners these bosses would be fine, but with 3 extra party members these fights last less than a minute or two if everyone is attacking. Many bosses also have an inherent weakness that can be exploited, so that can shorten the fights even more. The only exception to this design is the final boss, where thankfully the difficulty is ramped up a bit. I won't say any more than that though. Final nitpick is there are not enough unique mini-bosses. Kirby games before didn't shy away from including lots of ability mini-bosses, but Star Allies drops the ball in this department. After you beat the main story, you'll unlock 2 new modes, the Ultimate Choice and Guest Star. Note that both of these modes can be played multiplayer. The Ultimate Decision is reminiscent of the Arena or True Arena from past Kirby games, where it's simply a boss rush mode against most baddies in the game. Except with this version, you can actually choose your difficulty. The easier you make it, the less bosses you have to fight. The harder you make it, the more bosses will be thrown your way, and the healing items provided for you between each boss encounter is downgraded. As I have a history with the franchise, I think this is one of the easier boss rush modes, but it can still pose a challenge if you try it on the hardest difficulty, Soul Melter. Tidbit, if you have this difficulty unlocked, Kirby makes this frightening face, which is actually a reference to Kirby right back at ya. Guest Star is a unique combination of the extra adventures from recent Kirby games and Helper to Hero from Kirby Superstar Ultra. It allows you to pick any helper or character, this includes dream friends, and set out on a bite-sized adventure of the story mode. I like this mode mainly because not only does it allow you to play the best character, Knuckle Joe, but it's a really good time waster. Doing this mode can take about an hour casually, but if you speed through the entire thing, you might find yourself getting times as short as 40 minutes. It's a unique idea for the time attack mode we know Kirby games usually have, and giving you a huge roster of characters to choose from provides you some good replayability. So the 2 final pieces of content are the multiplayer minigames. The first is Star Slam Heroes. You set up in some totally tubular baseball attire and hit an incoming meteor with a baseball bat. You know, as any sane person would do. To get the highest score, you must time each of the command prompts correctly, else you won't bat the meteor the furthest. And the timing gets more precise in higher difficulties. Oh, not to mention, by saving your planet, you only redirect the meteor into other planets, destroying them and any other life that might be on them. And you celebrate afterwards. Man, this is so absurd. This style of minigame has been part of the Kirby series for years, so it's great to see it return. However, for the next game, Chop Champs, it's an all new minigame, and a pretty fun one in my opinion. It's a button mashing game where you compete to chop down a tree the fastest, all while dodging obstacles. When doing the harder difficulties, rate of chopping will speed up and more obstacles will be thrown your way. Personally, I think this is the most creative and fun minigame we've gotten from the Kirby series in years, so props to them. Although if you don't like mashing games from Mario Party and the like, you may not find this one enjoyable. So let's finally get to the main source of contention concerning Kirby Star Allies. Is the game any good without friends to play multiplayer? In my wholehearted, ethical opinion, I would say absolutely. While it's obvious the main focus of Kirby Star Allies is to bring together friends for local multiplayer, this is not necessary to get your full enjoyment out of the game. The main story mode, which is likely what most people care about, doesn't ever once feel like it had to be played with multiple people. I will say, however, my first experience with the game was with friends. I had them over the same day the game came out and convinced them to try it out, and we had a blast. Only one of my friends had actually played Kirby before, with the other 2 having no prior experience with the franchise. And yet we all still had a great time. We experimented with the friend abilities, goofed around during bosses, and everyone just had fun overall. We got about halfway through the game before we decided to move on to something else, and I finished the story mode by myself. Having a taste of both experiences, and playing a majority of the modes by myself, I can say with certainty that this game is a complete single-player experience. But if you have friends who have interest in the game, don't hesitate to try the multiplayer. You won't regret it. With that very long explanation of the gameplay content done, I believe that Kirby Star Allies deserves a 6 in terms of gameplay. Alright, let's tally the results. Kirby Star Allies receives a 6 out of 7. If you have the chance, go out and buy this game. It's a very welcome addition to the Nintendo Switch library, and it's a must-have for Kirby fans. Though it's lighter on content than some of the past games, and it still has minor issues, the simplicity and fun of Kirby Star Allies shines through and can keep you coming back for more. Thanks for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you'd like to see more content. Also comment down below to give me feedback on the style of review. It takes inspiration from content creators I admire, but, you know, at a much smaller scale. Anyways, hope to see you all next time. Bye bye!